Given the plethora of devices that the average user interacts with, our next speaker thinks it's strange that design systems mostly focus on phones and computers. She is a former staff designer at Google Nest, where she led a team of designers focused on building a platform for a helpful home that takes care of people in it and the world around it. Previously, she was a lead UX designer at Amazon, where she designed frameworks to scale Alexa across devices and co-founded Alexa Design System team. She has worked at Twitter, New York Magazine, and Scripps Networks. Presenting Cross-Device, the Future of Design Systems, please welcome the head of design and research at Modern Health, Jen Cotton.
Hey everyone, I'm Jen Cotton, and I'm excited to be sharing with you guys today. I really want to start off by thanking Gina for inviting me, and to thank Isaac, Nessa, and everyone behind the scenes here who are really helping to make today and this awesome event happen. So today I'm going to talk to you about cross-device design and trends that we're seeing across hardware, and how I think that that is going to fundamentally change how we think of and build our design systems. It's going to make them more responsive and inclusive, and it's really going to open up new use cases that we've never thought of before. So first, a little bit of background. For the past 12 years or so, I've spent my career like many of the designers here at Clarity. I've worked in experiences and apps, building them for websites like Twitter and New York Magazine. But about 4 years ago, I pivoted into hardware. And it was a whole new world for me, a new world of systems to understand and explore, and a new world in terms of consumer electronics. And I tell you this because right now, it's a super exciting time to be in hardware. What's happening right now is that there has been a ton of innovation over the past 5 years. And really, this is decades of work, building on the stuff that people were concepting at Xerox PARC and at Bell Labs. And so we're building on decades of knowledge and research when it comes to hardware and the ways people want to interact with their devices. There are 3 trends, though, that we're seeing, and I think these 3 trends are what we should focus on when it comes to what's happening in hardware. So the first thing is there is a crazy amount of increased usage across our devices. We're also seeing that those devices have new capabilities, and those capabilities are opening up new use cases for everybody. And finally, we're seeing increased platform support. We're seeing the major app ecosystems make it easier to support this. Before I dive into this first trend, I do want to say there's a lot of data that I'll share today that is focused on the US market. We do see comparable trends when we look at similar markets, but I do want to recognize that there's a lot of work we still have to do about opening access to our devices to emerging markets. But first, what's happening when it comes to device usage? Right now, the median US house has about 5 devices. And what's even more interesting is that we're seeing hyper-connected homes, homes that have 10 or more devices, which account for about 1 in 5 US households right now. And when you consider that the average household is just under 2, that is like an astronomical growth and usage of devices that we're seeing. Sadly, some of the trends that we are seeing are from COVID and the pandemic, where devices like tablets are re-emerging as valuable secondary devices, ones that offer increased learning and entertainment use cases for people. While we've also seen the pandemic increase people's investments in TVs and overall home entertainment. This really maps to the trends that we're seeing across device usage, where TVs are still the #1 most used devices, with smartphones on track to overtake that. But the big 4 devices that people are really using right now are TVs, tablets, phones, and computers. And so not only are we seeing just an increased amount of usage across these, we're also seeing that categories like wearables are also growing. So while not being sort of the dominant 4, things like wireless headphones are driving usage and purchase there. And what's interesting here is that we're seeing people adopt ecosystems, so that 50% of all iPhone users end up buying within Apple's ecosystem when they go and get wireless headphones. And finally, one of the biggest trends that we've seen is a growth in emerging devices. You know, there's VR and AR headsets, but really the standout here is the speaker category, where now nearly half of US homes own a speaker, and of those, 3/4 of those users also own another device. So even in emerging device categories, we are seeing users, really adopt this multi-device ecosystem. And so if that's what's happening, if we're seeing tremendous amount of growth and usage, if we're seeing cross-device capability or use cases come up, then let's look at the capabilities of those devices and what those capabilities open up for people. I think the biggest trend and the biggest change that's happened really is around voice and voice interactions. Those coming to speakers and displays, but those also being amplified on TVs, tablets, and computers. So now that most major devices really do leverage voice interaction in some way or fashion. And it's not just voice, it's things like gesture that are making it easy for people with physical impairments or people with visual impairments to interact with technology in meaningful ways, in ways that were originally designed for them that aren't tack-ons. And this increase in accessibility is something that warms my heart. It's happening not just within the types of ways that people can interact, but it's also focused on the inclusive nature of different groups. So the lower barrier to using voice technologies has made it so that 20% of all older adults own a smart speaker, and 50% of those adults use those daily. That's an incredible amount of adoption for a group that historically people haven't designed for. And it means that new products and use cases are being built for these groups unlike before. Amazon has invested in the Alexa Care Hub, which lets people connect to their elderly loved ones and opens up a way for them to be less isolated. When we focus back on the capability side of what's happening, I think what's really interesting here is the advancement in recognition features. These features are making it so technology can be much more glanceable while also being proactive and hyper-personalized, showing me things that only relate to me while showing my roommate things that only relate to them. And this ability for our technology to be more proactive while at the same time being ambient and disappearing into the environment is really helping everybody with their own digital well-being. While we are seeing more devices come to market, those devices are looking at ways of being less addictive, more ambient, more environmental. And I think this really helps us to serve people with limited cognitive function, whether that's around executive function or cognitive processing. And this is something that, when you think of what are we building and who is it for, some of the capabilities that our devices are now opening up. And I think what's interesting is it's not just the capabilities from a technical spec point of view that are changing and opening things up. We have entire ecosystems of apps coming to these new devices. The fact that Netflix has built an app for displays and across the major competitors, across Amazon Echo and Google Nest Hubs, is showing us a real investment in these categories and the fact that users want to have these new experiences, these richer things on these devices. The phone isn't the only one that now has apps. And I think the biggest place where you see this, where you're like, oh my God, what is happening, is really within the TV space. We're not just seeing more applications come to it, we're seeing cameras being added that open up video comms to connect people living room to living room. We're seeing this rich way of connecting with one another in the place that feels most natural to sit down and have a conversation with your loved ones. And so the final thing is, and I know I don't need to preach this to this crew, is really about, okay, well, a design system is nothing without being implemented in code. So we should really look at what's happening on the platform side. Here we see Apple invest in things like Catalyst, making it easier to build native Mac applications by using your existing iPad code base. I think while this is the long-running joke in tech, whether Apple will unify all of its operating systems, you see movements to really serve users, to match the fact that we have this increased device usage. Let's make it easier for developers to build. We also see this with Google in its latest Material U guidance that was released at Google I/O this year. They finally released design guidance that is specifically targeted and looks at larger screens. They explicitly say, here's what it's like to design and build for more devices. And those devices are component backed, which means that they're going to scale to the wide number of OSs that Google supports as well. And finally, since Samsung is really Android-based, I won't take a moment here, but I will stop off at Amazon, which is kind of the third major player right now in the ecosystem space. They've really invested in the Alexa presentation language, which is a universal front-end language to write once, but to deliver your experiences and your design systems across a range of devices, from TVs to displays and beyond. And I think what's really interesting about Alexa and Amazon's approach here is really that they've built in voice to the components from the beginning. All of their layouts, all of their components have voice built in, and I think this is a trend we'll start seeing. So back to the trends we're seeing. If we're seeing a crazy amount of device usage here, we're seeing new device categories being introduced. If we're seeing new capabilities around recognition and ambient and voice, really pushing the ways that people interact with their devices, becoming more inclusive, creating richer experiences that are easier to build. So if this is what's happening, I think it's safe to say that our design systems aren't built for this. They're built for phones and computers and not the multiple device world that people have, and not for the new device categories that are being supported. Our design systems support touch and keyboard mouse input, but they don't support voice or gesture. Our design systems are primarily visual. They don't use audio or conversational interactions. Really, our design systems have never considered what's happening in hardware. But it's okay. I know you guys are sitting there thinking, Jen, we're just a small design systems team. There's only 4 of us. We're up to our ears in a Jira backlog of tasks that we still haven't tackled. I know a lot of you guys aren't resourced like large FANG companies, and it's really, really okay. I think what's exciting is that we have enough time now to build towards this future. We have enough time to change our design systems, to build in the functionality we need in order to meet all of these user needs and meet these new use cases. So really what I wanted to do was get you excited about what's happening in the landscape here, and then to focus in on, okay, so how can we make our design systems ready? What do we need to do? I'll go through a set of tips here. So these first 2 are practical tips to help you decide, well, which devices do I even need to expand and support? And I really want you to think about it not being a zero-sum game. You don't need to support all of the devices that are out there. In an ideal world, you could support the big 4, tablets, TVs, computers, and phones. But really, I think what's exciting is that there are common groupings for you to think about. Some of them, because design systems support phones and computers, if we just expanded to tablets and TVs, you would be able to expand your design system, think through some of these new considerations and these new modalities, and start building towards that future. Other of our device constellations are more use case driven, where phones attached to wearables create great, awesome audio experiences on the go, or can be used for experiences that are fitness tracking or monitoring. Whereas displays and speakers are great for distance use cases, hands-free, audio-driven experiences. While finally, TVs, tablets, and speakers, when considered as a constellation, really lean into those entertainment use cases. Speakers can create great spatial audio, a new way for you to interact with your devices, while tablets can be a great second screen experience for you to consider here. And so really, it's not all of these devices you need to support in your design system. It's really thinking, okay, what is the experience that I'm building? What is the app? And how might I extend my current design system to more devices that support that use case? Next, I want us to look at how people are using their devices. Really, the ways that people interact with their device is based off of a couple key things. The first is really just the device capabilities and the modalities that are available. Like I said, if you're only supporting phones and computers right now, when thinking through, do I need to support voice? It's pretty easy to sort of put voice on the back burner for those two device categories. The only thing you lose by not supporting them really is, the ability to reach more people and to open up these new interaction patterns. But if you're looking at something like TVs, displays, or speakers, and you're questioning, should my design system support voice? Absolutely. Voice is pretty much table stakes on these devices. Part of that is because of the inputs, but part of that also is because of the distance that people interact with them. Because, a TV might be 10 feet away from you and playing, you need more of the remote. You might need that remote close to your mouth in order to interact via voice. Whereas if you're washing dishes in the kitchen, of course you're gonna need voice to interact with that display. And so as you think through adding new modalities and supporting them in your design system, consider the device categories that you're supporting or that you want to support. The next big thing is, okay, so we've narrowed it down. Here are the devices we're gonna support. Really, you want to start thinking about, okay, well, how do these devices fit into my experience? How should I start thinking about them? And this is an easy one. We have people like McCall Levin who have created frameworks like the 3 Cs to help people understand what happens when multiple devices are in an ecosystem. The 3 Cs here are consistent, continuous, and complementary design. Where consistent design, this is the design system we all know. It's porting over the same content and experiences across your laptop, to your tablet. It's, Netflix, being able to watch it, download videos, browse, have different profiles across every device, no matter where a user is. Where continuous design is really about the flow from one device to the next. It's the ability to connect experiences and flow them. So I could be, listening to a playlist on Spotify and almost instantly pause it and pick that up on my phone and carry on exactly where I left off. Where complementary design really looks at the devices together as an ecosystem. It's a sketching app on my laptop that lets me find inspiration, send it to my tablet, and instantly trace that to create art. Really, when you think about it, consistency is the baseline. It's the thing we all know and I think we're comfortable with, whereas continuous and complementary are where our design systems can expand as they become more multi-device. And really this is just to say, it's not here like an all or nothing or a one approach. It's probably gonna be a layered approach for you. You're gonna have to figure out how can I get my design system consistent across an increasing number of devices, and then where does it make sense for my design system to build in more capabilities or functionalities. Things like state matter more when you're doing continuous design. Next, I want you to think responsively, right? If we're thinking about consistency, that responsiveness isn't just in the visual layer. It's really in audio and visual together. I think we think of responsive as this, maybe not everyone here, maybe this is just outside people who don't know enough about design systems, but people think responsive design is we have a bunch of screens, different landscapes, different orientations, different screen sizes. Let's just make them fit and scale across all these devices. But what we're starting to see as we add new capabilities, new interaction types, is that responsive means something wholly new in this world. If you take the Alexa weather experience, when you ask Alexa for the weather on a speaker, it will just use the audio track, the text to speech, because that's all it has, right? As the weather team thought through bringing that to other devices like displays and TVs, it thought of responsiveness in a whole new way. On displays where a user might be at a distance, the screen, even though it's a pretty sizable size, has just the weather in a large typeface. It really goes to show that you need to be able to use your voice and see the result visually, but that needs to be supported with audio. Finally, to the point where they went to TVs, I think what's really interesting is the context of watching TV here, where you're watching Stranger Things. You don't actually want that visual, even though you have the full screen, to responsively take up the full screen, because you want to consume the content. You want to be able to ask what's the weather and not have your visual interrupted, and you really don't want to have your audio interrupted. And I think that's what's exciting here when I think of responsive design systems, this type of framework, where both the audio is responsive in terms of length and amount of audio, as well as the visual being responsive for when there is no screen available, to when there are large screens available, really understanding that context and use case and becoming responsive because of that, not just responsive because of the screen size. And so finally, I just want to leave everyone with a tip that's about the community here. Like I mentioned, Clarity is an awesome community of design systems people, and there are people who are here that I'm sure you'll chat with who are already supporting some of these new devices. And so leverage the community, talk to people about how they're scaling their device, or scaling to multiple devices. But then also, we've got a lot of amazing literature that's out there that's been written by UX professionals with tons of experience in the field. The first I mentioned already is Designing Multi-Device Experiences by Michal Levin. The next is Designing Beyond Devices by Cheryl Platts. Both of these get at multi-device and multimodal experiences. And then if you want something really specialized to voice interactions and what that new interaction pattern is, I really would recommend Kathy Pearl's book, Designing Voice User Interfaces. So I hope this got you as excited as I am about what's happening in hardware and the new devices space in general. It's not just because more people are using devices or a love of technology that has me excited. It's really because it's opening up new use cases unlike ever before. It's making it so people can interact with their devices who've never been given access to tech in such a meaningful way. And so really, I hope that you guys are starting to think about how you might iterate your design systems to include more devices, to think through these new capabilities, because I know I can't build towards this future without all the design systems people here. So thank you for your time, really appreciate it, and I hope you go start tackling some cross-device design UX.
All right. Thank you so much, Jen. That was great. Uh, it gave me a lot to think about, especially talking about. I work in the land of web most of the time, so I usually just focus on websites, not even like apps, like actual just websites. And so I don't necessarily think about, I don't necessarily think about, oh, native apps, especially like the voice interface as well. Even though I'm an active user of voice interfaces, I started recently using, I have Apple devices, so I started recently using Siri quite a bit. And at first I was really resistant to it because I was like, I don't want to talk to devices. I don't like this idea of like, I kind of have a little tinfoil hat on for a second. I'm like, I don't like this idea of like my voice becoming this thing that people recognize and respond to. So anyways, I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but it made me really start thinking about, okay, if I was to expand into the realm of doing more things across like actual native devices and mobile devices, how can I best leverage these other interfaces that I have not really been paying much attention to? So I want to say thank you so much for kind of bringing that to, at least to my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I was right with you. I never thought of myself as somebody who would have ended up in hardware, but the sort of role of voice, the accessibility side of it, like the number of seniors and older adults who use voice as a technology, or the number of people who need it, for any sort of like ability challenges, like that is real. And I think we often like discount it or don't talk about it enough because it doesn't hit critical mass numbers. Similarly, with the other devices, like some of the conversation in the chat was like, oh, well, how much do people use these? And it's like, I think if we keep to kind of like the last talk's theme, like if we keep obsessing over like numbers of hours watched on something or like consumed, how much people like are actually engaging on it, like I think that that's a part of the addictive technology side. And what's lovely to me about things like voice and displays is like their usage patterns aren't as high as the phone, and are more ambient devices a good thing? Is it okay if we're not sitting here like hitting millions and millions of users? Can we be okay with that?
I would like to, I'd like to believe that yes, we can and should be okay with still respecting even though this doesn't have millions and millions of users, still respecting the users that actually need it enough to put our all into it and not just like brush it aside. It's like, oh, well, it's only those people, like they can have a subpar experience, which is really what we're basically saying. It's like, we don't care enough about their experience to actually put some thought and like work into it, which is a really sad thing to think about.
Yeah, and that's where, even if you think of, hey, I could only support the phone, like all of the major players support voice on the phone. And so how is your app, supporting voice on a phone so that you don't have to open it up and engage? Like, can you actually have the full interaction without like leaving the phone on your desk or on the bedside table? There were a lot of sort of chat conversations about people being like, I do not want to talk to my voice, like a little bit of your vibe here. And trust me, I've like sat in user research sessions. We got Mike Hone on the call, who's another former Alexa person. I have been in sessions where people speak that truth, and I am here for that. This is not a like shove voice down your throat thing. But what Apple's Siri team found was it really depends on your own personal comfort and your own chattiness. People who prefer to talk want to talk and talk at length with their devices. People who don't. And I think this is where it gets to like, okay, we can't take our own personal biases of how we want to interact, with something and then like not support it within our system, especially when, the actual OS makers are making it way easier for you to use other modalities.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to get to the Q&A, the questions from the chat in a moment, but I do have a very, very important question that's not in the chat. Who's in your lap?
This is Booker Michelle Obama.
Oh, hello there.
Updated Booker T. Washington for 2022. When they go low, he goes high. So.
That is great. That's amazing. Yes, I'll always show the dog. Always show the dog. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get to some of the questions that we had here in the chat. Okay, so the first question I have is from Henri, and he wants to know, how do you feel about Samsung warning users not to discuss sensitive or private information in front of their TVs? I didn't actually know Samsung did this, but apparently it's a thing.
Yeah, when they rolled out Bixby, I'm sure they got very similar feedback that the other TV manufacturers did around people's like discomfort in talking to devices. And so, there's a real privacy issue around having open mics. Whenever I used to tell people, hey, I work on the Alexa design systems team, they would be like, I do not want a device in my house like recording me, and I get it, but everybody's walking around with a phone that's basically a low jack with an open mic and a way better camera and processor. If you want to look at the guts of what happens inside a speaker, it does not have the processing power to even do constant like audio recordings. There are privacy leaks that happen. And I think that there are people within the companies trying to sort of navigate how do we do that. I don't think we are there yet. I think the privacy angle of this is real. It was one of the reasons why I was really surprised Facebook released Portal TV, just given Facebook putting a camera on your TV in your living room is a major privacy concern for people. So I don't think any of the hardware giants have figured this out. I recognize it. I don't want to sit here and say oh yeah, privacy isn't an issue. I just feel like we should also look at the fact that the phone that we're carrying around is a way scarier device to me.
Yeah, that's actually something that I feel like we who work in technology should know and should kind of understand, but I get my little tinfoil hat on every once in a while. I'm like, I don't want it's creepy that my devices are listening to me, but at the same time, yeah, I got the phone that basically knows all my secrets, so I don't know what I'm worried about here.
And it's not listening to you all the time.
Oh
If I
yeah.
were to really get dorky, it's like listening for the phonemes that key off the word Alexa or key off the word OKG. So
Yeah, no, I know that obviously. It won't actually trigger unless I say the word it's looking for. But yes, I get that. Okay, cool. So next question here, let's see, it's for Michelle. Michelle wants to know, what's a common hardware device that came out in the last, say, 5 years that's most surprising to you? Or I guess another way to put it is, what would you not have bet on working out 5 years ago that actually is very popular?
yeah, I think the rise in what sometimes hardware people call hearables is a surprise to me. That's AirPods, any sort of
Oh, okay.
device that enables you to hear. There's wearables, and hearables are a subset of them. Just a really dork. I'm sorry, but that was really surprising to me. I didn't think, just given that not everybody likes constant sound, that people don't want to necessarily a lot of people don't like in earbuds for the physical
Mhm.
sensation of it. That I was really surprised to see Apple really nail the market on that, and to use it as a way of closing in their ecosystem. I'd say the other thing is the smart speaker, smart display. I would have never thought that I would even have the opportunity to work on that space. You would think, oh, a speaker, yeah, how many can you sell? How many can you give away in the case of some of the giants? But that was really surprising to me that people were willing to talk. I know not everybody here willing, but that people were willing to talk to their devices was not a thing that you would have ever convinced me of 5 years ago, especially
Yeah.
considering I worked in magazines and stuff. I'm people do not want that.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I definitely was reluctant to do the talking to the devices thing, but I've come on board. I'm fully in there now. Me and Siri, we have some chats. It's okay. Cool. So let's see. We have a time for maybe two more questions here. So let's say this is from Brian. Brian wants to know, if a company wants to invest more in cross-device design systems, does that mean that companies should hire this device specific technologist, or can a web first or mobile first design system inform cross device design systems?
Yeah, I can't imagine that a company outside of one with a substantial budget would fund it. A specific person for TVs, a specific person for, speakers or displays. You do see that. I think Spotify and their cross-device experience is really one of the best. They really
Mhm.
target a million different types of devices. Their experience is really seamless. They understand constraints of latency on different devices. They really are, I think, one of the gold standards of cross-device design. I think if you were to actually think of all the things from web and mobile responsive, that's why I was saying trying to show the audio example. systems designers have it in them to think like modularly, to think responsively, that
Mhm.
those translate. You just need to learn new constraints of the devices. Oh, TV is a 10-foot with a remote experience, there's audio playing, and that really, interact, or that changes like the interaction, or, learning that smart displays are typically a distance thing, and actually you got to really blow up your type super large. I remember the first time I got my first smart display, and I was like, what is this ginormous type size? And then you have to think through the interaction of, all right, I'm across the room, I'm talking to something, I need to be able to like read it.
Yeah.
And that's where, those are like new learnings, but systems people are systems people. You could like extend to a new device and pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, that actually, you mentioning like the type size, it actually reminds me of a more recent trend I'm seeing in like web design, where type sizes have gotten much, much larger just on web, like normal browser experiences as well. So I don't know if that's a if that is more informed by being more accessible to people with low vision, or if it's more about the thinking about these other smart devices. But in any way, I've seen that, yeah, that can very easily translate to this big type you have for your homepage could also be visible on, the Samsung Frame TV you may have that's across the room or something. But yeah, I say Samsung Frame because I have one and I love it, so I'm going to be biased in that sense. But yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful design. And, towards that, how do we make something ambient and not feel so like, black gadget in my home?
Yeah. Great. Okay. So let's see. I have another question here from, let's see, from Chad. Chad wants to know, what role do you think design tokens would play in cross-device design systems work?
Yeah, so when we were building the Alexa design system, it's written in a new front-end markup language called the Alexa presentation language,
Mhm.
which lets you write once and deliver across TVs, computers, displays, tablets, and phone. When we were doing that, like the entire ways that we were writing it was entirely in tokens. Like every variable is abstracted because you have to target a million different types of, you know, screen sizes, types of inputs, things like that. And so like design tokens are like the bread and butter of us really trying to do cross device well. I think what's interesting is to see how design tokens might evolve from this. How do new modalities really change a token? Have we considered what the like 5 way as an input means in terms of a variable? Like, do we need to abstract even out a layer higher? These are like conversations that we were having as we did this, but it's, I think, the reason why a lot of why design tokens are so successful, and it's like even more critical as you target more devices.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense that design tokens are meant to be agnostic of the technology you're using. So yeah, they definitely would be the biggest component, so to speak, of building a cross-device, cross-platform system. So yeah, I love design tokens. I love thinking about them. I am sorry, I like had a little bit of a brain fart there, but yeah, I definitely want to see get more involved in using design tokens myself. Unfortunately for me, I again work mostly on the web, so like it's usually just cross browser, but not cross platform or device. So mine tends to be just a little pared back from other people's systems there.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if you're only doing web, like this is not a talk to like shame you to hit a
oh, no,
million
no, no,
different
no.
types of devices, but like it's still,
Yeah.
you're still doing the core work.
I would really love to get more involved in like building things for, you got me thinking about voice interfaces now. Like I would love to be able to play around with building more for Alexa and Google and Siri and all of that. But anyways, that's a thing to think about for another day. Anyways, thank you so much, Jen, and Little Booker there. It's Booker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation with us, with me, I should say, and thank you so much for the talk. It was great. I learned a lot of things are spinning around in my brain right now, and yeah, I will see you all after our break. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.